Hi everybody, I'm Rachel Collins, and I wanted to give you a quick guide into the writings of Paul. This isn't all-encompassing, but it will give you a good springboard into the letters that are being covered just this week and in the coming weeks. This week we're diving into the epistles, and the epistles make up 21 of the 27 books of the New Testament. Many of the letters are written by Paul to different churches. The books attributed to Paul are Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. So today we're going to hit 4 of the 13 Pauline texts. It's interesting to note, though, just on a scholarly note, that there are differences in the way that the scholarship around Paul's writings has developed. Out of the 13 texts that we have a pretty firm consensus that 7 of them are written by Paul himself: Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Philippians, 1st Thessalonians, and Philemon. There are 2 disputed letters that are considered to be authentically Pauline: Colossians and 2nd Thessalonians, and there are 4 letters regarded by the majority of critics to be written after Paul's time by his disciples. Those are Ephesians, the pastorals, which are 1st and 2nd Timothy, and Titus. Historical evidence says that Hebrews was not written by Paul, which is a common conception. This idea of the letters being composed in the name of the teacher in the past isn't new. It's generally done by people who have studied their use of language and their theology extremely closely. And the things that give them away is the change in language throughout history where the letters are found, things like that. It's incredibly interesting to get into these facts, but not all that important. Right away, I think it's important to remember that what we see in the text after the Gospels is really the establishment of the early church, and that is significantly harder than it sounds, right? There are so many competing ideas, differing communities going one way, random people coming through claiming to have known Jesus, and we confront several of these problems right away in the book of Galatians as you've been reading this week. One of the main problems was who and what constituted being a faithful Christian, although they wouldn't have used that term often yet. And as you've read, and I'm sure you've picked up, one of the main questions here is, do you need to be Jewish or maintain Jewish law in order to be faithful and to receive the promise of God through the works of Jesus? So while Paul was writing these letters, they were not being written as scripture. They were written more as personal letters, and they would have been shared. They're directed to a whole community of faith, instructed to be read in worship, circulated through communities, and through their reading in the service alongside scripture, they would eventually be adopted as such. Paul's letters have a form and structure that go along with his style. Most of his letters are organized like this, with an introduction that will have a greeting. He will say who he's sending it to, who it's for, the addressee, who he is, and a greeting. And that moves into Thanksgiving, where he might do one or more of these things. He might pray for them. He might share his wishes for them, give thanks for the community, remember his time there, express his joy of knowing them. And then you get to the meat of the letter. The body has its own formula. The body opening can sometimes be as simple as, I want you to know. And then you get the bulk of the information, the request, the recommendation, the exhortation. And then you have a closing of the body, which generally includes Paul's travel plans. So maybe when they'll see him again, or when they'll see somebody that they know, and a summary of what he said before. The conclusion is a conclusion. He'll wrap up and point to future plans a little more and then be done, but not really, because there's almost always a postscript that includes greetings from the other people that are there with him currently, and another farewell. That's just our general structure, maybe a little more structured and formatted and drawn out than our letters are today at all times, but they give you a great idea of where you can find the denseness and the meat of his conversation. I know that I can get lost in the New Testament readings, and sometimes knowing this can help direct you and refocus when you get off track. Hope this helped.